Lin Hao squatted at the construction site, holding the guitar in his hand, staring at the data on the screen. This area is a newly developed commercial area in the city center, surrounded by high-rise buildings, with just dug soil under the feet, mixed with the smell of steel reinforcement and concrete. He wiped his sweat from his head. Today's work was particularly difficult, and the geological data was always unfavorable. It was like something hidden underground that could not be seen, and he forced his measurement results to become a mess. "Brother Hao, this place is very evil." The little Zhang beside him gnawed a piece of bread, full of bread slags, and talked with a little bit of lingering in his language. "I heard that this place used to be an old shop, and when it was demolished, there was something strange. The workers heard a sound underground at night, as if something was gasping." "Don't talk nonsense." Lin Hao glared at him without any worries, stood up and patted the soil on his pants. "I have any strange powers and gods in my head this year. The data is either the equipment problem or the geological layer is abnormal. I will work overtime tonight and test it again." Xiao Zhang curled his lips and muttered something. Young people just don't believe in evil, but he still went to pack up his tools. Lin Hao shook his head and his eyes fell back to the soil under his feet. He always felt that there was a little disagreement here, not the kind of ghost-like argument that Xiao Zhang said, but a feeling that he couldn't speak, as if something was rushing underground, pulling his nerves in conjunction. As the sky got darker, the workers on the construction site continued to finish their work. Lin Hao and Xiao Zhang left it until the end, intending to finish the last set of data. The night wind blew over, bringing an inexplicable sense. Lin Hao shivered and held the hand of the quizzer, unconsciously tightened it. The finger on the screen suddenly jumped, then turned a little bit, and finally frozen on a completely unreasonable value. "Is this broken thing bad again?" Lin Hao pointed his eyebrows and knocked on the croaker, but the fingering still did not move. He squatted down and looked down at the point of the test. The surface of the soil looked nothing unusual, but the feeling of anxiety became stronger and stronger, as if something was whispering underground. The sound was fine and blurry, and the content was unclear, which made people's backs numb. "Brother Hao, why don't we come back tomorrow? The weirdness of this night is so frightening." Xiao Zhang's voice came from behind, with a little bit of noise. "I'll go down and take a look." Lin Hao gritted his teeth, picked up the flashlight and the iron, and walked down the digging slope. The slope is not deep, only 2 or 3 meters, but the further you go, the clearer the lower the words, like a group of people chanting private words far away, or like a low bird that comes out when the wind blows through the void. His heart was bulging, but his steps did not stop. The iron dug out the soft soil until the lens touched a piece of hard stuff. "What is this?" Lin Hao squatted down and shone it with his flashlight. He saw a corner of the black stone exposed under the soil, with some incomprehensible patterns on the surface, like some ancient symbol. The soil around the stone is also very strange, showing a dark red color, as if it was stained with something. He reached out and touched it. The stone was icy and the touch seemed to be directly penetrated into the bones. At this moment, the ground suddenly shook, slightly clear, as if something was moving violently underground. Lin Hao's heartbeat and the flashlight shook violently. He subconsciously retreated, and heard the little Zhang behind him scream, "Brother Hao! Come up quickly! This place is about to collapse." Before he finished speaking, the soil slope under his feet began to move loosely, and the small pebbles rolled down happily. Lin Hao gritted his teeth and ran up the ground. As soon as he climbed to the top of the slope, the entire soil slope collapsed, forming a large piece of soil. He coughed so much that his face was ashes. When he turned around, he saw that the place he had just dug had collapsed into a deep pit, which was pitch black and could not see clearly. What is this?" Xiao Zhang's face turned pale and he said tremblingly, "I said it, we should call the police in this evil gate, don't worry." Lin Hao didn't say anything, staring at the deep pit. I don't know why, but he was not afraid, but instead had an inexplicable impulse, wanting to go down and see what that stone was. He slammed his head, threw away the ridiculous idea, and patted Xiao Zhang on the shoulder. "Okay, go back first, and ask someone to deal with it tomorrow." But when he got home that night, Lin Hao turned around and couldn't sleep. His brain was full of the black stones and the soft voices from the ground. He even had a dream, dreaming that he was standing in an endless darkness. Under his feet was a winding river, and there was a golden light hidden in the river, as if there was something alive moving. In the middle of the river, a huge shadow appeared slowly, flashing with cold light, and eyes were like two red lights, staring at him straight. He wanted to run away, but he realized that he could not move, so he could only hear a low voice sound in his ears. "Who are you? Why did you wake me up?" Lin Hao suddenly sat up from the bed, sweating heavily, and his heart was beating. He glanced at his phone. At 3 o'clock in the morning, there was a silence outside the window. Only the light from the lights from the far road passed through the window, casting a spotted shadow. He rubbed his son's vagina and told him that it was just a dream, but the anxiety in his heart could not be suppressed. The next morning, when Lin Hao arrived at the construction site, he found that the site had been blocked. Several police cars were parked beside him, and some people in uniform were taking photos to obtain evidence. Xiao Zhang ran over tightly and said in a low voice, "Brother Hao, something big happened. A bone rack was found in the pit last night. I heard that it was not from modern people, and there were marks on the bones, as if they were scraped with a knife. The police suspected that it was from an ancient tomb. We may not be able to do this job." Lin Hao heard the eyebrows tightly, and the black stone appeared in his brain. He was about to say something, but he heard someone calling his name nowhere. When he turned around, he saw that it was a middle-aged man in plain clothes. His face was dark and his eyes were so sharp that he could see through people. "Are you Lin Hao?" The man walked over, took out a business card and gave it to him, which read Wei Tianming, Director of the Real Estate Development Department of the Wei Group. Lin Hao was stunned for a moment. The name sounded familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had heard it for a while. "I am." Lin Hao took the business card and tried to ask, "What's the matter?" Wei Tianming smiled, making people uncomfortable, as if they were hiding something. "I heard that last night was the first thing you found unusual. I want to ask, have you seen anything special?" Lin Hao's heart skipped a beat, and his face was silent. "There is nothing special, it's just that the data is incorrect." He went down to dig a few times, and the soil collapsed. "You also know that the terrain of this old city is complicated and landslide is not uncommon." Wei Tianming stared at him for a few seconds, as if he wanted to see something from his face. Finally, he pointed, "Okay, if you think of something, contact me anytime. This is my private number." He passed another paper and turned away. Lin Hao looked at his back and felt that this person felt an indescribable sense of pressure, like a wild beast that would come up at any time. He stuffed the paper into his pocket and decided not to worry about these messy things for now, but he still felt that this was not that simple. During the lunch break, Lin Hao received a call, which was called by his childhood sweetheart Ma Su Xiaoqing. As soon as the phone was connected, I heard her voice that was so excited that she was about to jump up. "Lin Hao. Guess what I found? The place where something happened to your construction site yesterday. Someone on the internet said it was the entrance to the dragon. He also said that there was a real dragon's blood hidden underground, which could control the atmosphere of the entire city. Do you think it was super cool?" Lin Hao rolled his eyes without saying a word. "Shi Qing, do you believe these messy urban stories? I am a tester. I know the geological data better than you. There is no such thing as dragons, they are all written by blindly. Tisk, you're just a dead brain." Su Xiaoqing hummed in dissatisfaction. "I told you that I've found some information. There was indeed a silo in this place before, called Longko Temple. It was said that it was a special town to press something. Later, it was demolished, and strange things were gone. Did you encounter something last night?" "Don't fool me." Lin Hao asked for a lip service and wanted to say something, but he didn't know where to start. Finally he sneered, "Okay, let's have a meeting to chat in the evening. I really have something to tell you." After hanging up the phone, Lin Hao sat in the temporary rest shed at the construction site, and his brain formed a group. Dragon? True dragon blood? These sound like something in the novel, but the strange feeling in the shadow of dreams last night made him unable to completely act like a joke. He looked down at his palm, feeling an inexplicable heat in his palm, as if something was moving inside. In the evening, Lin Hao and Su Shaoqing met in a small restaurant on an old street. As soon as Su Shaoqing met, he threw over a pile of printed materials and said excitedly, "Look, this was mined from some old files. It was said that there were dragons underground in this city. Someone tried to dig a picture a few hundred years ago, but they all died in an unknown way. Also, some people say that the power of dragons can make people live forever and even control natural disasters. You said that if this is true, it would be so awesome." Lin Hao took the data and flipped it casually, and his mouth still had the unconventional attitude. "Qing, you are a reporter, not a novel. These things are unproven, so don't guess." But he was not so calm in his heart, especially when he saw the word Dragon Guardian mentioned in the data. His fingers trembled unconsciously. As we were chatting, a person suddenly walked into the entrance of the hall, wearing a gray robe, gray hair, covered with patterns, and had a pair of unusually bright eyes. He walked straight towards Lin Hao's table, and after sitting down, he didn't quarrel, and spoke directly. "Are you Lin Hao?" Lin Hao and Su Shaoqing looked at each other and were confused. Lin Hao pointed. "I am. Who are you?" The old man did not answer directly, but took out a jade pendant from it and placed it on the table. The jade pendant is green and carved with a plate of dragons, which is lifelike. Lin Hao's heart suddenly jumped when he saw it. The dragon on the jade pendant was somewhat similar to the shadow he saw in his dream. "My name is Gu Xianfeng." The old man's voice was low, with an inexplicable sense of pressure. "Last night, you touched something you shouldn't touch. The seal of the dragon was broken, and the blood inside your body began to wake up. If you don't want to die, or don't want to turn this city into a ruin, just follow me." Lin Hao stood there in a daze, his brain buzzing. Bloody? Wake up? What is this and what? He wanted to laugh, but he found that he couldn't laugh at all, because there was no sign of joking in the old man's eyes. Su Shaoqing's eyes lit up and she came over to the voice and said, "Lin Hao, why don't this person be such an infamous master, right? He seems to know a lot about Long Feng." Lin Hao ignored her, just stared at Gu Xianfeng and tried to ask, "Why do I believe what you said? Also, how do you know what I did last night?" Gu Xianfeng snorted coldly and stood up. "Believe it or not, but the power of the dragon has begun to affect you. You will understand that some things are not something you can hide if you want." After speaking, he turned around and left, leaving a sentence. 3 days later, I will wait for you. If you don't come, the consequences will be borne by yourself." Lin Hao looked at his back and felt a little confused. He looked down at the jade pendant on the table, his fingers clenched his fists unconsciously. Su Shaoqing next to him was still whispering something like Dragon Guardian, but he couldn't hear a single word. His brain was full of last night's low voice and the red eyes of the dream. He knew that his life would probably never go back to its past. Lin Hao sat on the wooden chair in the hall, holding the green jade pendant in his hand, and it was still a mess in his brain. After Gu Xianfeng left, the noise in the restaurant was diamond again. Several uncles at the table next door were drinking and had thick necks. They were chatting about football competitions loudly, but these sounds seemed to be separated by a layer of glass, and they could not be heard. Su Shaoqing sat opposite, her eyes as bright as a searchlight. She turned around and took a picture of the jade pendant with her cell phone in her hand, and muttered, "This thing looks like it is not an ordinary color. The carving is so exquisite, it may be really an antique. Lin Hao, do you think that old man really knows the secret of Long Zi?" Lin Hao glanced at her without any worries and put the jade pendant in his pocket. "Qing, don't guess it. This thing is probably a fake product, and the old man might be a snare in the world, and he is specializing in fooling people." That's what he said, but he was not sure. With Gu Xuanfeng's eyes, Xianli seemed to be able to see through his soul, and the words bloody awakening made him feel that there was nothing wrong with him. Su Shaoqing curled her lips, obviously not believing his words. "Tsk, you are just a dead brain. Last night, you said that the construction site is very evil, and now an old man is emerging again. Is this a coincidence? Besides, do you always feel unfavorable recently?" I don't think you have a good face, it seems that you haven't had a sleep. Lin Hao was stunned by her words, and wanted to retort, but he swallowed it back until he was around. Indeed, he was in a very poor state these 2 days, unable to sleep at night, and always felt unconscious during the day, as if he was being stared at. Not to mention the inexplicable heat in the palm of your hand, and scrub it from time to time, as if there is something to be diamond in it. He snatched his head and said, "It's okay, it's just that the work is too tiring." "Okay, don't think about these messy things. Let's go back to their own house after eating." Su Shaoqing wanted to say something, but seeing that Lin Hao was impatient, he had to listen to his shoulders and bury his head and pick up the rice in the bowl. After the meal, the two people separated. Lin Hao walked alone in the alley of the old street, and the night wind blew over, bringing a sense of joy. He looked down at his palm, and with the light of the road, he felt that the traces in his palm seemed to be deeper than before, as if there were a few more detailed lines, winding and gathering into a blurry pattern. He rubbed his eyes, thinking that he might be too tired and had a hallucination. When he got home, Lin Hao fell asleep, but his brain was still thinking about Gu Xuanfeng's words. Bloody? Dragon? These things sound like myths, but why does he feel inexplicably familiar? In a daze, he made that dream again. Under his feet was darkness. In front of him was a river of golden light. The huge shadow in the middle of the river was slowly emerging, and the red eyes stared at him. This time, the low voice became clearer. Why did you wake me up? Your blood is my descendant." Lin Hao suddenly woke up, sweating heavily, and his heart was beating like a drumbeat. He sat up panting and looked at his cell phone, and it was only 2 o'clock in the morning. There was a dead silence outside the window, only the lights and shadows of the road from far away were shaking on the wall. He wiped his face and told himself that this was just a dream, but the anxiety in his heart became more and more intense. He suddenly remembered the jade pendant left by Gu Xianfeng, took it out from his pocket, and looked carefully with the light of his mobile phone. The dragon sculpture was lifelike, the slab was as delicate as it could move, and a small red stone was shaped like a solidified drop of blood in the dragon's eyes. His fingers were touched unconsciously, and the jade pendant suddenly became hot, as if it was burned by fire. He shook his hand and fell on the bed. "What's this thing?" Lin Hao murmured in a low voice, lifted up the jade pendant and looked at it again, and found that the red stone seemed to have lit up, and it immediately returned to normal. He felt that this thing was getting worse and worse, but he couldn't throw it away. He hesitated for a long time, and finally stuffed it into the bedside drawer, planning to say it tomorrow. In the next 2 days, Lin Hao tried to restore his normal life. The construction site was temporarily suspended due to a landslide incident, so he simply asked for a few days off and hid at home to watch the drama and brush his mobile phone. But no matter how distracted he was, the feeling of uneasiness was finally overwhelmed. The heat in the palm of your hand is getting more and more frequent, and sometimes you can even feel a slight vibration, like a rhythm of rushing and jumping. He even began to wonder if he had any disease, but he didn't dare to go to the hospital for fear of being treated as a neurotic. On the evening of the 3rd day, Lin Hao decided to go to the restaurant to go to the contract. In fact, he didn't believe in Gu Xuanfeng's style, but he felt that it would be impossible not to take it. It seemed like an invisible line was pulling him, forcing him to face it. Su Shaoqing heard this and insisted on going with her. She said that it was helping for the participation, but in fact it was a hot topic. The two arrived at the restaurant, picked a table by the window and sat down. Before they could wait, they saw Gu Xianfeng pushing in, still wearing a long gray robe, with a heavy face as if they had owed someone $1 million. "You're here." Gu Xianfeng sat down and opened the mountain. There was no greeting in his language. "It seems that you still can't call him without a single dragon." Lin Hao pointed his eyebrows and tried to ask, "Old sir, I still don't understand what you mean. What is dragon selves? What is blood selves? I am an ordinary person, who does the test. What does these things have to do with me?" Gu Xianfeng snorted coldly, and his eyes swept over him with a sharp look. "Ordinary person? If you are really an ordinary person, you will not touch the seal of the dragon's body, nor will you hear its whispers. there is a blood sculpt of the dragon's body flowing in your body. This is determined by the fate, and you can't escape or escape. Su Shaoqing's eyes lit up when she heard it aside, and she couldn't help but interrupt. Wait, old man, is the dragon you are talking about the energy lines underground in the city? Also, what does blood sculpt mean? What's the essence of Lin Hao's ancestors? Gu Xianfeng glanced at her and did not answer directly, but took out an old book from her sleeve. The cover was made of some kind of leather and the edges were grinding white. He pushed the book to Lin Hao. This is the record of the Dragon Guardian, and there is everything you want to know. But I warn you that once you open this book, you will never be able to return to your past life. Lin Hao looked at the book and wondered. He instinctively wanted to refuse, but his hand stretched over without hearing. The moment his fingertips touched the book's skin, a cold chilling sank into his heart, as if someone had been sucked from the head to the head. He gritted his teeth and flipped open the first page, which used a strange text to write dense content, like a certain talisman, and there were circles of light around the dragon. This is... Lin Hao pointed his eyebrows and tried to identify the words, but the more he looked, the more he felt, as if an invisible force was diamonding into his brain, causing him to turn dizzy. Don't force yourself. Gu Xianfeng slammed him coldly and reached out to close the book. Your bloodstain has not yet fully awakened. Now reading these will only cause you to collapse. I will teach you how to control this force, but the premise is that you have to prove first that you are qualified to be a guardian. Certificate? Lin Hao raised his head, his language was a little impatient. How to prove it? I haven't figured out what I am like, why do you want me to prove it? Gu Xianfeng ignored his questions and just stood up. Tonight, go to a place with me. You will understand that the power of dragon is not something you can ignore. After speaking, he turned around, leaving Lin Hao and Su Shaoqing to talk to each other. This old man is really mysterious. Su Shaoqing curled his lips and said in a short voice, Lin Hao, are you really going? Wani is a cheater, or what if he has any bad intentions? Lin Hao didn't say anything, but just looked down at his palm. The heat began to rush again, as if urging him to make a decision. He gritted his teeth and stood up. Go. If you don't go, I always feel like I'm not going. Don't come with me. If you have any trouble, I'll be fine. Su Shaoqing was displeased, and Lima retorted, No. I am a reporter at least. I am better than you in checking and solving the case. Maybe I can help you. Don't let me go, anyway, I'll follow you. Lin Hao sighed helplessly. Knowing that he couldn't hold her back, he had to click, okay, but listen to me, don't come. At 9 o'clock that night, Lin Hao and Su Shaoqing followed Gu Xianfeng to a deserted factory area on the outskirts of the city. This place has long been deserted, and the surrounding area is full of broken factories and grass. When the night wind blows, the air is full of iron lenses and dampness. Gu Xianfeng took them through a narrow alley and finally stopped in front of an iron door that looked like the entrance to the basement. The iron door was covered with spots, and the locks were already damaged, and it opened with a squeak. What is this place? Lin Hao looked at his eyebrows, and he always felt that the air was very heavy, as if something was hidden. This is a day for Longfeng. Gu Xianfeng said in a low voice, with a solemn sound in his voice. 10 years ago, this place was the point of the Guardian family, but it was destroyed later, and the energy of the day became chaotic. Tonight, all you have to do is perceive this energy and try to establish a connection with it. Lin Hao heard a fog and was about to ask clearly that Gu Xianfeng had already taken out a copper key from it and inserted it into a secret groove next to the iron door. With a low sound, the ground suddenly shook, and a downward stone appeared behind the iron door, which was pitch black and could not be seen clearly. Go down. Gu Xianfeng said coldly and walked down first. Lin Hao and Su Shaoqing looked at each other and followed them with their heads. The stone level is very narrow, and the walls on both sides are covered with moss. There's an indescribable smell in the air, like rotten or burned breath. The further down, the low voice began to rummage around Lin Hao's ears, shattered and blurry, as if someone was whispering far away. After walking for about 10 minutes, the stone arch finally reached the head, and a huge underground space appeared in front of him. The walls around him were engraved with strange runes. In the center was a circular stone platform, with a huge black stone head embedded on the stone platform, and the surface was also engraved with dragon-shaped patterns. Lin Hao's heart thumped when he saw it. The stone was almost exactly the same as the piece he dug at the construction site. This is one of the seal stones of Longfeng. Gu Xianfeng walked to the stone platform with a low voice. Its energy has begun to leak out. Can you feel it? Lin Hao didn't say anything, but he really felt it. The heat was radiating from the palm of his hand to the whole body, as if blood was boiling, and the low voices on his ears became clearer and clearer. He could even hear several words that were constantly interrupted: descendants, protect, danger. He gritted his teeth and tried to press the pressure of this uneasy, but his body was unconsciously walking towards the stone platform, as if being led by something. Be careful. Gu Xianfeng suddenly shouted loudly and reached out to hold him. Your blood is not stable yet. Now when you touch the seal stone, you will only be swallowed by its power. But it was too late. Lin Hao's hand had touched the surface of the stone. A cold energy instantly penetrated into his body, as if countless beads were piercing into his bones. He hummed in pain, his eyes turned black, and he almost knelt on the ground. At the same time, a golden light suddenly appeared on the surface of the stone, and the dragon-shaped patterns seemed to be alive, twisting slowly and making a low roar. Not good. Gu Xuanfeng's face changed drastically. He quickly took out a yellow talisman from his body, bit his finger and painted a few runes on it, and then suddenly stuck it on the stone. The golden light suddenly dimmed, but the energy did not completely disappear. Lin Hao could feel that it was absorbing his body a little, as if he was trying to blend with him. Lin Hao, how are you? Su Shaoqing's face turned pale in surprise, and ran over to support him. Lin Hao gasped and reluctantly said, is nothing. But he knew that he was not good at all. The energy was shattering in his body, as if to tear open his flesh and blood. At the same time, strange scenes flashed through his brain: an ancient city, countless people kneeled in front of a huge dragon shadow, the dragon shadow roared, the sky and the earth were shaking, and then there was a picture of blood and fire. The city was transformed into a ruin, the dragon shadow sank into the ground, turning into a winding golden river. This is, what? Lin Hao murmured softly, his voice trembling so hard. Gu Xianfeng looked at him with a confused look on his face. This is Longfeng's memory. The blood inside your body is sharing the birds with it, but this also means that you have been rolled into this battle and have no way to retreat. Lin Hao felt a slump in his heart. He was about to ask clearly, but he heard a sound of footsteps coming from the entrance of the underground space, which was rapid and heavy, as if a group of people were approaching here. He turned around and saw only a few figures in black appearing in the stone throne, holding weapons in his hands and covering his face with a mask, and swaying. Wei Tianming's people. Gu Xianfeng gritted his teeth and roared, with anger flashing in his eyes. They really followed. Without Lin Hao reacting, he heard the man in black sneered, Gu Xianfeng, do you think he can swallow the power of the dragon? Today, we will take away this kid and the seal stone. Before the words finished, the man in black had already been blocked, and the underground space was in chaos in an instant. Lin Hao's heart beat faster and his brain was blank, but the energy inside his body seemed to be activated. He suddenly slammed his arm, causing him to punch subconsciously, hitting a man in black in the chest. The man hummed and flew out a few meters away and smashed it on the wall. This. Lin Hao looked at his fist and was shocked. He obviously didn't use much force, but the power of this punch seemed to be nothing to him. Don't be stunned. Gu Xianfeng shouted loudly, and the yellow paper talismans in his hand flew out, turning into flames, forcing several men in black to retreat. Take Su Shaoqing away. I'll hold them. Lin Hao gritted his teeth, couldn't think too much, and pulled Su Shaoqing to run towards the stone. But the fighting sound behind him became more and more intense, and the flames and roaring sounds intertwined, making him panic. He knew that it had just begun, and he had been rolled into a storm that could not escape. Lin Hao pulled Su Shaoqing and stumbled onto the stone wing. The sound of fighting behind him was like thunder in the underground space, and the flames reflected the walls light and dark. His heart was beating wildly, and his brain was in a mess. The force of the punch was still on his arm, as if reminding him that the strange power in his body was awakening. Su Shaoqing was panting and her face turned pale. She still couldn't help but ask, "Lin Hao, what are you just now? Why did you hit someone like filming a movie?" "Don't ask. I don't even understand it myself." Lin Hao gritted his teeth and shouted in a low voice, without stopping his pace. The stone was narrow and slippery, and the moss on both sides made the foot slippery. He almost fell down a few times, but the inexplicable anxiety in his heart urged him to leave this ghost place quickly. Behind him, Gu Xuanfeng's angry shout mixed with the man in black's curse, and occasionally a muffled sound was slammed, as if someone was thrown to the ground hard. Finally crawling to the iron door, Lin Hao kicked the scallop door with one foot, and the night breeze came, bringing a slight tranquility, which made him a little awake. He looked back and saw that it was still pitch black under the stone, with only scattered fires flashing, and it was impossible to see the ancient mysterious wind clearly. He felt nervous and felt unfavorable, but he knew that he would not be able to help him when he went back now. We just ran away like that? What's the old man?" Su Shaoqing gasped, her face full of worry, and obviously realized that the ancient Xianfeng might be in danger. Lin Hao didn't say anything, but just clenched his fists. He knew that Gu Xianfeng stayed to fight for time for them, but he was an ordinary person, and even the strange power of his body would only cause trouble when he went back. He gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "Let go first, find a safe place, and then try to contact him." Su was a little clear, although he was unwilling to give up, but he didn't say more. The two of them stumbled through the wasteland area. The surrounding broken house looked like a giant crouching beast in the night, and the smell of iron and grass was filled with the air, making people feel wailed. Lin Hao's brain was still recalling the scene in the underground space just now. The black seal stone, the blood and fire flashing in the sea of brain, as if someone was forcibly stuffing into his memory, strange and familiar, which made him feel distracted. After running for about 10 minutes, the two finally arrived at the edge of the factory area. There was a deserted old road ahead. The lights had long been damaged. Only the high-rise buildings in the far city were shining, like another world. Lin Hao stopped walking, gasping for breath, and the palm of his hand began to ventilate again, and the heat spread to his arms all over his body, as if something was in his body was clamoring to rush out. He bit his teeth tightly and tried to press the pressure, but the more he felt, the more he felt, the more he felt, and cold sweat broke out on his head. "Lin Hao, what's wrong with you? Why is your face so bad?" Su Shaoqing saw that she was not in a match and held him tightly, and her words were full of concern. It's okay. Lin Hao smiled fiercely and stood up straight. But the voice fell, and a deep bird suddenly came from a distance, as if something was shaking underground. Then, the ground under the foot was slightly slim. Although it was not strong, it was enough to make people's backs swell. "What's this static?" Su Shaoqing widened her eyes and looked around, with a little trembling sound in her voice. Lin Hao didn't answer, but he had any guesses in his mind. This calmness was a bit similar to the low voice he heard for the first time at the construction site, as if something was awakening underground. He was about to say something, but his phone suddenly hit, and the screen showed a strange number. He hesitated for a moment and then picked it up. "Lin Hao." A low voice came from the phone, with a sneer. It was Wei Tianming. "It seems that you are running very fast, but I will still avoid the energy of Vane. The energy of the dragon has begun to leak out, and the blood in your body will be out of control. By then, not only you, but this city will be ruined." Lin Hao's heart sank, and his hand holding the phone tightened unconsciously. "What do you want to fuck? What does the matter with long phone have to do with you?" Wei Tianming smiled lightly, his lingering was filled with mockery. "Related? Of course, there is relationship. The power of dragons can change everything. I will decide whether to have wealth, power, or even fate. Do you think that old man Gu Xianfeng can protect you? Tell you, he can't even protect himself." My people will soon find you, give up everything you know, and maybe I can save you a lifetime. Do a dream. Lin Hao gritted his teeth and roared, and just wanted to say something else, but the phone was already closed. He looked at the black screen phone and almost threw it to the ground, but in the end he still held it back and said to Su Shaoqing, Wei Tianming's people are chasing us, so we must find a place to hide. Su was a little clear, and although his face was still very bad, he had a little more determination in his eyes. I know there is an old warehouse in the north of the city. I went there when I was conducting a survey before. It was remote and I should be able to hide at any time. The two of them said no more and rushed to the north of the city at night. On the way, Lin Hao's brain turned around and thought about Wei Tianming's words, and the whereabouts of Gu Xianfeng. He knew that Wei Tianming was not scaring him, but the energy of Long Feng was indeed affecting him. The power in his body was constantly moving, like a trapped beast, and could break through the prison at any time. And Gu Xianfeng, he had a bad feeling in his heart, but he didn't dare to think deeply. When we arrived at the warehouse, the sky was already bright, and the broken iron leather roof was even more broken in the morning light. There were scrapped boxes and miscellaneous objects, and the air was filled with a smell of mold. Lin Hao sat down in a corner, leaned against the wall and closed his eyes, trying to calm himself down, but the low voices on his ears became clearer and clearer, like a group of people quarreling in his brain, making his head burst into tears. Lin Hao, are you really okay? Su Shaoqing squatted beside him, looking at him with a worried face. I see your condition is getting worse and worse. Why don't we find a doctor to take a look? It's useless for doctors. Lin Hao shook his head and his voice was low. This is not a disease, it's the energy of the dragon. I can feel that it is trying to talk to me in a picture, but I can't understand it and can't control it. Su Shaoqing bit her lip and was silent for a while. Su suddenly took out a printed piece of information from her bag and sent it to him. This is what I have looked for about dragon sacks before. Although it is not complete, there is a way to mention it, saying that if the blood sacred awakener can find the main point of dragon sac, he can pass through some kind of stable power. Do you think this will be useful? Lin Hao took the information and casually flipped through several pages. His eyebrows were tightly locked. The main spot mentioned in the data is a place in the history. It is said to be the source of dragon energy and the place where the ancient dragon falls. However, no one knows the specific location. It is said that it is hidden in the deepest part of the city and protected by many seals. He was about to say that this sounded too mysterious, and suddenly there was a rapid sound of footsteps outside the warehouse, followed by a few low conversations. They are here, searching for details. President Wei said that the boy had a dragon breath and couldn't run far away. A rough voice came, like the head of a man in black. Lin Hao felt nervous, and Lima signaled Su Shaoqing not to make a sound. The two of them quietly moved to the back of the box and held their breath. As his footsteps grew closer, he could occasionally hear the sound of the iron stick hitting the ground, as if the other party was trying to explore every corner. The heat in his palm began to swell again, as if he was feeling dangerous, urging him to fight back, but he suppressed this impulse, knowing that it would be worse now to fight head-on. Fortunately, the other party searched around and found out that they were hiding, and their steps were moving away. Lin Hao relaxed his voice, but the pressure in his heart did not decrease at all. He knew that Wei Tianming would not give up easily, and the whereabouts of Gu Xianfeng were still unknown. The only hope might be the main spot mentioned by Su Shaoqing. Xiqing, do you have any other threads about the main topic? Lin Hao asked in a low voice, with a sudden sense of determination in his eyes. Su Shaoqing hesitated for a moment and pointed, yes, but not sure. When I checked the information before, I found that there was an old water factory in the east of Qingdong, which was abandoned a few decades ago, but it was said that the place used to be the backyard of Longkou Temple, and there was a dark river underground, which might be part of Longkou. Why don't we go and have a look? Lin Hao didn't think much about it and agreed. The two of them took a break and quietly left the warehouse while it was still early and headed towards the east of the city. On the way, his palms became more and more lit, and the low voices on his ears became clearer, and he could even hear a few complete sentences. The descendants, come back, protect. He was shocked, believing that this sound was guiding him, but he didn't dare to believe it completely. When we arrived at the water factory, the sky had already turned completely bright. This place is even more broken than the warehouse. The iron silo has long been broken. The factory is full of spider nets and dust. There is a fishy smell in the air, like the smell of water rotting. Su Shaoqing took several abandoned reservoirs he had walked through, and finally stopped in front of an inconspicuous underground entrance. The entrance was sealed with iron plates, but the edge was already loose and could be pried open with a little force. The data says that there is a dark river below. Su Shaoqing said in a low voice, with a little nervous sound in the voice, but I don't know what the specific situation is. Why don't you wait first? I'll go down and explore the way. No. Lin Hao shook his head, his eyes fixed. This matter has something to do with me. I'll go down. You can answer it from above, and if you have any trouble, run away immediately. Su Shaoqing wanted to argue, but according to his determination, he had to click and help him pry open the iron plate. Lin Hao held the flashlight and carefully climbed down a broken iron ladder. The air became more and more damp, and the sound of the water flowing could be heard in his ears, shattering in detail, as if he was in a low voice. He felt a little nervous and thought that this sound was a bit similar to the low words in his brain. When I climbed to the bottom, it was indeed a dark river. The river water was pitch black and scented with a strange smell. There were some blurry runes carved on the stone walls on both sides of the river, as if they were scraped out with a knife. Lin Hao walked forward along the river channel, his hand shone through, and he saw a huge stone arch in front of him. There was a plate of dragons engraved on it, and 2 red stones were shaped at the position of the dragon's eyes, like solidified blood drops. This is... Lin Hao's heart beat faster, and the low voice in his brain suddenly became unusually clear. Destiny, you are here, guarding, or destroying. He gritted his teeth and tried to press this sound, but the energy inside seemed to be ignited, and he suddenly slapped his arm, making him almost unable to hold the flashlight. At this moment, the stone arch suddenly shook, the red stone head lit up a dazzling light, and the river began to swell, as if something was about to be pushed out from the bottom of the water. Lin Hao took a step back, feeling both afraid and inexplicable expectation. He knew that this might be the main point in his final chance. At the same time, a rapid sound of footsteps came from the entrance, and Su Shaoqing's voice came with panic. Lin Hao. Wei Tianming's people are here. Come up quickly. But he had not come yet, and the light of the stone arch suddenly flourished, and a huge suction force pulled him in. His eyes turned black, as if he had fallen into an incredible depth. When he opened his eyes again, Lin Hao found that he was standing in a vast space. Under his feet was a river of golden light, and in front of him was a huge dragon shadow, with cold light flashing, and the red eyes staring at him. The low voice echoed again, as if it was blown up directly in his brain, directed, have you finally come? Choose, protect, or destroy. Lin Hao's heart was beating wildly, and countless pictures flashed through his brain, the prosperity and ruins of the city, the intercourse between blood and fire, the teachings of ancient Xianfeng, and the depression of Su Shaoqing. He gritted his teeth and finally opened his mouth. I choose to protect. No matter what you are, I will not let this city be destroyed in your hands. Longing let out a low growl, as if satisfied with his answer, and then turned into a golden light and suddenly diamonded into his body. Lin Hao only felt that his whole body was torn and reorganized. The pain made him almost kneel down, but then, the energy began to calm down, as if he finally recognized his master. He gasped, feeling his control of this force was unprecedentedly clear. When he opened his eyes again, he had returned to the dark river. The light of the stone arch had dimmed and the river water had returned to its tranquility. But the sound of the footsteps at the entrance was getting closer and closer, and Wei Tianming's voice came with a sneer. Lin Hao, do you think you can escape by hiding here? Long Feng is mine, who shouldn't try to snatch it? Lin Hao stood up, with a cold look in his eyes. He knew that this was the last battle. He is no longer the confused tester, but the guardian of Long Feng. The power in his body flows with his will, as if it can explode at any time. Before the speech ended, the stone walls on both sides of the dark river suddenly shook, as if responding to his determination. Wei Tianming came in with a group of men in black, his face full of greed and crazy heat, but Lin Hao was no longer afraid. He took a deep breath and walked forward with his feet. The dragon's power inside his body rolled out like a flood, turning into a golden light, colliding with the other party's dark force. The river channel was shining with light, roaring and roaring, like a recurrence of the ancient war. Lin Hao knew that this battle was not only for himself, but also for this city, for those he cherished. He will not retreat, nor can he retreat. The outcome of the battle is unknown, but he knows in his heart that no matter what the outcome is, he has found his mission.